Hey, good morning, students. It's Mr. Mize again. Good to be with you. Today's lesson is looking at part 2 of this two-part lesson on creating art and being creative through subtraction. And so that's what we're going to do. You have already been introduced to some practice with the Novel Blackout Poem. In the videos you saw, Austin Kleon did it with newspapers and a Sharpie. We are doing it with our reading book. We're using words, pre-existing words that we did not create, to shape, transform, remix, to make it something new and fresh. So let me share my screen with you as we get started. So we're moving from our Gatsby practice to our own reading book. And so you all had practice with your handout, and it's always fun to see, I'm going to be looking at these today, just how much variety, even within a whole class, or for us it's 4 classes, we have four freshman classes submitting these things, of how much variety can happen even within this small space on this one page of Gatsby. So this was the text that you all used. That's what you submitted to me. Here is one example. One of the things I did want to point out on this too is notice that this blackout artist is using much longer phrases. And when you do that, I'll talk about this a little bit later, it's fine. The only concern is it might sound too much like the original source. It might be too close to F. Scott Fitzgerald's original words. That's one thing you want to be mindful of, because transforming these pieces is really what we're after. Not just you want to keep an element of disguise. You want it to be so the original writer would not even recognize their own words if possible. So here's an example. We already looked at this one in the last class. Notice this student decided to they actually grabbed whiteout, and they did it this way. And if you have whiteout, you can also do a whiteout poem. So anyway, it doesn't have to be a Sharpie. So these are different examples using the same text, but there is an element of disguise on these examples where F. Scott Fitzgerald, if we woke him up from the dead, good chance he would not recognize his own writing because of how changed, how transformed this page actually has become. But this is going back to a page out of Austin Kleon's book, Steal Like an Artist. I have a copy of it right over there. But he does this nice T chart, this T table for us, as he explains the difference between being a good thief and a bad thief. And the one I really want to focus closely on is this one right here. This idea of transforming something as opposed to imitating it. And also this idea of remixing original material to make it your own, as opposed to just, no, I'm taking that, copy paste, it's mine, when in fact it really isn't. So this idea with transformation is really disguise. Again, one of the ways we can do that is asking ourselves the question, would the original writer recognize their own words given how much I've changed it? Have I transformed it enough to maintain this element of disguise? So here's some tips. Austin Kleon talks about this in his video. He starts with an anchor word, a word on the text that kind of just jumps out at him. If you're looking at a page of your book and there is no words jumping out at you, grab another page. And one other tip that I forgot to mention in this slideshow is you want to try to stay away from dialogue, because dialogue often does not help write good blackout poems. If you don't believe me, try it, see what you find. You're welcome to prove me wrong. But that's one kind of text I haven't had much success using in a book is dialogue. It tends to be a bit more effective for the other prose, not the dialogue pieces of your text. But starting with an anchor word, a word that you actually want, or could even be a phrase in your final poem. If you can't find the exact words you need, this is where you can use a little trickery. You can use letters from several words to create the word you need. You can go back and look at examples in our prior lessons where writers will do this. They'll grab the M here and the E here, and it makes me, although there's some gaps, but that's okay, as long as your reader understands and you're good. I mentioned this before a couple times, I think, is the importance of avoiding names of people. People's names have very strong connotations for a poem's reader. And I'm not sure that you necessarily want to cause your poem reader to go into this other space because you decided to put in the name, I don't know, Amanda, and they have a bad experience of a cousin named Amanda who's really irritating. They want to avoid at all costs because they're just an irritating cousin. I'm giving you a silly example, although I do have a cousin named Amanda. Um, but yeah, if you can just avoid the names, and it's also helpful to maintain that element of disguise because names are very particular to particular stories written by particular authors, and you want to try to keep the source material hidden so the author wouldn't be able to recognize their own work if they came across your blackout poem. And this is just, you saw this on the pirate example from last time. Your poem doesn't have to go top down. You can make your way around, almost like a maze, if you will, as long as it's clear to your reader. You don't have your reader in the room with you, so you want to give as much context and clues to your reader to know how they need to read your poem. For most of your poems, they will be top down. You'll start at the top, you go line by line, so on and so forth. But some of you may want to do it a different way. Just make sure that the pathway for your reader to read your poem is clear, whether it's you drawing arrows or dots or whatever, almost like a treasure map that you're following. You know how they have like the paces. So just something to keep in mind. And then lastly, this is something in addition to your uploaded poem, I'm going to ask you guys to actually analyze your own poem. Now, one of the things I understand is some of your poems are just going to be humorous and nonsensical, very Dr. Seussian. That's fine. That's fine. But I am still going to ask you to participate in these questions. Let me go through them. So the first question I have for you is tone. What's the tone of your poem? Is it serious? Is it humorous? Is it amused, angry, playful, nonsensical, cheerful, sad, gloomy? I'm missing another one. I'm going to give you guys a list of a bunch of tone words that you can look at on the assignments itself, and you can choose what tone does your poem convey. The tone can be formal, informal, playful, angry, serious, humorous. The tone of a poem can even change throughout the poem. That's clever poets do that at times. In describing a poem's tone, you may use any kind of adjective you wish as long as it accurately conveys your interpretation of the writer's attitude toward the subject or the audience. So again, I'm going to provide you with a list of tone words you can choose from. And again, if your poem is just funny and kind of nonsensical, that's totally fine. Symbolism. Are there any key objects that are symbolic in your poem? If so, what are they? What could they symbolize? That should be a question, not a period. Again, you don't have to go out of your way to do this. I'm just curious if you saw any objects within your poem that really are symbolic. Obviously, like poems that have things like flowers. Flowers can be a symbolic of happiness or new life, or even change through time. Some poems might even make reference to time itself. Time or a watch, right? Watches are symbolic of time. We're moving forward. Oh, so anyway, you can talk about symbolism for a long time, but is there any? And if not, just say so. I don't really see any symbolism in this poem, which is totally fine. Just make sure you answer the question. We talked about imagery in our narrative writing. Do you, as the poet, have any sensory imagery in your poem? If so, what senses does your blackout poem appeal to? Sight, sound, touch, taste? Probably not. Well, maybe. Depends if taste could be in there. I don't know why I'm saying that. But what impact does that sensory imagery have on your poem? Poem is missing a word there, sorry. Too many typos on this. And then, are there any thematic topics in your poem? Love, friendship, loss, difficulty, hope, joy? If so, what are they? Just jot them down. And I think that's it. So you're on your own books now. What page will you choose? That's completely up to you. If you have questions on this, guys, please don't hesitate to ask, message me on Canvas or send me an email. And I am happy to assist. This is supposed to kind of be fun and creative. And if you are finding this not fun or creative, message me and I'll see if I can actually help with that. Until then, guys, I'll talk to you soon.